if you've spent as little as 5 minutes on the internet. I bet you this, which is the only dollar I own, that you've come across some sort of video of somebody yelling at you that you need to hustle in order to get where you want to be. Hi, my name's Gabriel, and I've been wrestling with that for almost 4 years now, since I first got into self-development. And initially, I thought the very same thing. However, I've learned a lot over the course of those years, and it's gotten me to the point where I now believe that hustling is actually dangerous and holding you back from becoming the person you want to be. Over the course of this video, I want to take a look at the fundamental problem of hustling, then take a look at both ways I believe it's holding you back from making progress as well as being happier, and then show you my strategy and what I am currently doing in order to make sure that I move forward but don't fall into the trap of hustling anymore. So first up, what even is hustling? So I believe that one of the most famous people that promote the idea of hustling is Gary Vaynerchuk. And I don't mean that he's a bad person whatsoever. I just feel like it might get you to believe certain things that simply aren't true. I know that in my case, I basically interpreted things that were completely wrong. But in general, the idea is that you put every single waking hour you have at your disposal in order to work towards your goals and dreams. And that also includes turning down things like spending time with your family and friends in order to get more hours that you can then spend working on a certain thing. And that's seen as an idea of brute force. You put in so much time that you basically force yourself to make any kind of progress. However, I believe that the greatest advantage of hustling is also its greatest flaw. See, when you track time and when you look at the time you spend doing certain things, it gives you control, or at least a sense of control. I believe that progress is quite difficult to measure. When you go to the gym, you won't immediately see improvements, and that might very well get you to quit. When you hustle, you don't necessarily look at whether or not you're getting the results you're looking for. You're rather making sure that you're putting in as much time as possible and measuring that. I might not be able to tell whether or not I made progress, but I can very well look at the clock and say, I spent 5 hours today, let's make it 6 tomorrow. However, I believe exactly that to be the greatest flaw. Because in my opinion, and from what I've experienced during the last 4 years, improvement, things like happiness, as well as making progress with the things you do, is not measured by the time you put in. Here's a huge disclaimer. I am not delusional. I believe that you need to put in a lot of work in order to get where you want to be, and that it's going to take you quite a while. You might have to pull an all-nighter, and things are going to be tough. But although you will spend time working, I don't think that that should be the thing that's getting measured. As Peter Drucker said, what gets measured gets improved. And I actually started an experiment for about 3 weeks where I tried that quote, and I basically created certain measurements for my life in order to see whether I would be able to make improvements. And I saw that the measurements I chose would have a direct impact on my progress. For example, I measured the time I would spend reading a book. And that's completely useless because it doesn't ensure that you're reading it well, that you're understanding what's written there and applying it into your life. So you could change and look at the pages you read, but that also doesn't necessarily ensure that you're really taking in the information. So as a result, the measurement you choose really has a big impact on whether or not you're achieving the results you want. And when you measure the time you spend doing certain things, that might very well happen to you as well. You might improve that time while not making any additional progress or any progress at all. There's this famous idea of the 10,000 hour rule. In order to become an expert at something, you need to put in 10,000 hours of work. And the author based this concept on a study that looked at violin players and the hours they put into mastering their craft. However, even the supervisor of the study said that that's not really the idea of the study. He does not believe that it's as simple as getting to those 10,000 hours. It's also about deliberately and mindfully practicing, as well as not necessarily comparing playing the violin with other crafts. So now let's look at very specific arguments for both why it's holding you back from making progress, as well as living a happier life. When you want to make progress, you need prioritization. Imagine your goal was at the end of a path. And in order to get there, you would first have to get everything else out of the way in order to take that path and travel there. There are rocks as well as sand on that way. The idea of hustling is that you just put in time. You take those big rocks and throw them out of your way, but you also take care of every little grain of sand, every dust mote. You don't look at the necessity of your work and rather look at putting in time in order to get things out of the way. What you need to be doing is described in a great book called The One Thing that actually one of you guys recommended to me. The idea is that you need to identify which tasks are going to contribute to you achieving your goal the most, and then make sure that you take care of those. Regardless of what you do that day, you need to get those tasks done because they will help you to make the progress you're looking for. And looking at our path, you are then getting the biggest rocks out of your way, because you know that a little sand is not going to worry you as much. However, you're going to be much quicker than the person hustling, putting in the time, as well as being much more relaxed. You might not take care of everything, but you're taking care of the things that matter with utmost quality. Next up, working for work's sake. As you know, I'm a student, and you can't imagine how many times I've seen people spend that last day before the exam studying for hours. At that point, it's not necessarily about learning, because you probably can't do that in such a short amount of time. It's about somehow feeling confident and doing so by putting in an enormous amount of work. And I feel sorry because I used to do the same thing, but that's not effective at all. You can spend much less time with proper prior planning, and then you need to be smart enough not to fall for that trap of false confidence, of putting in time working for work's sake just so that you can feel confident. It's not going to change anything about the result. And at that point, if you've prepared well with anything in life, you don't need to spend that extra time. You should already be confident, regardless of what you might believe. I figured out for myself, and I believe that's the same thing for everyone, we don't have unlimited focus or willpower. So looking back to that one thing, you need to be sure that you save your self-discipline, your willpower for those important tasks. You need to get those tasks done with the utmost quality, and that means having recovered from your past work when you start those tasks. However, when you spend every waking hour, and probably also time you should spend sleeping, working on stupid tasks, you're not going to have the willpower and discipline to take care of those tasks that are the most important. And the question you need to be asking yourself is this strategy sustainable? There's nothing wrong with putting in a little bit more time every now and then. You might have a week or two, maybe even a month where you really need to get going, or you might even have to pull a few all-nighters. I'm not saying that should be the case, but once again, as a student, I know how it is. However, I believe that this was a problem that was holding me back and messing with my head for years now, because I was trying to create a system that simply couldn't work for the long term. I was going for perfect days, meaning that I wouldn't spend any time doing anything else other than working on my goals for school. However, after a couple of weeks or even months, I would need some time off. That's just how it is. So I basically fell into a loop of trying to get everything perfect, then having a setback, and then feeling bad about myself, only to then start over and over again. And the reason is that although you might be able to focus on a certain thing if needed, even if that means making extreme sacrifices for a couple of weeks or months, even a year, that does not mean that that should be your default setting, that should be the way you live your life. So let's look at happiness. According to the study of adult development at Harvard Medical School, where they watched adolescents for, I believe, 70 or 80 years and asked them questions about their life, one of the most important factors that contributed to their overall happiness and well-being was the quality of the relationships those people had with their close friends and family. When you listen to these hustling gurus, they tell you that your family is something you might need to sacrifice in order to get where you want to be, that you might have to give up time with them or even ignore them entirely in order to get forward. And if you're anything like me, you don't want to achieve some perfect vision or goal, and while trying to get there, completely feel miserable and hate your life. And therefore, even as an introvert, I'm going to listen to that. I believe that it's important to make time for friends and family. Some hustling gurus might tell you that, and other times you might very well just assume it yourself, but spending time with those people is not a waste of time. Another thing I believe to be very important is hobbies, and the time you spend doing something that might not contribute to you paying your bills. Every person has certain talents, and the idea of hustle culture is to either work so hard that you can turn that into a business, or to ignore it entirely because it's a distraction and basically holding you back from making one thing perfect. And I understand the idea. You probably can't do everything and expect to be really good at everything. However, it can be very beneficial to have an escape, where you don't have the pressure that what you're doing automatically means that if you're not good at it, if you don't feel like it right now, you will not be able to pay your bills. You don't need to turn everything you do into a business. Every now and then, it can really help you to recharge and recover in order to gain strength for the tasks that matter most. Certain hobbies like, I don't know, playing the guitar can help you deal with stress, because it basically means that for just a little while you can forget everything else. And one thing you might not be aware of, your brain is incredibly powerful. There's a great book called No Mind for Numbers, and it talks about the fact that your mind is able to process certain problems even while you're not actively thinking about them. So that means if you're stuck at work, you can't solve something, it might very well be beneficial to take some time off, do something else, and let your mind work on that thing while you are recharging. It's not wrong to start a task, realize that you can't complete it right now, do something else and then get back. Because if you're just sitting there and can't really figure it out, that might be a greater waste of time than taking some time off, recharging and then getting back to work. For quite a long time I tried to suppress everything else that I was enjoying, and I didn't feel good doing so. So I'm now giving myself the freedom to do things like this that don't necessarily contribute to my overall goal of achieving certain grades in school, but still give me immense pleasure. I don't want to get to my destination if the path makes me feel miserable. So in conclusion, here's what I've learned and how I intend to move forward. What gets measured gets improved. Find out what's important to you and what your goals are, and then figure out how you can make sure and measure that you're making progress and moving towards those goals. And while doing so, don't just focus on the time you spend. Another idea, and that's something I've been doing for quite a long time, don't start your day without knowing what the most important tasks are. I ask myself this every single evening and schedule my next day. It's my job to ensure that I get those tasks done, and don't let anything like other seemingly more urgent tasks or the basic fear of not doing enough get me distracted from getting those done with the utmost quality. Another idea, force yourself to come up with more effective methods of doing certain things. When I stopped chasing the idea of perfect days where I would spend the entire day working for school and instead spend time doing things I enjoyed, I forced myself to come up with more effective methods of getting my things for school done. I came up with new strategies that allowed me to learn more effectively and to get my work done quicker. And looking back, my grades have actually improved. I've actually gotten better at what I do, not just in school. And I've also been able to enjoy my days just so much more. And last but not least, don't forget, sometimes it's smarter to take a break. And I hope to see you very soon. Take care.